Welcome to our first council meeting of the month of May. I'm Mayor Stev. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Councilmember from District 4, Roxanne Devi-Madu, Councilmember from District 3, Clinton Truesdale, Councilmember at Large, Dennis Brady, Mayor Pro Tem Dufour Wolfley, Councilmember at Large, Wanda Rogers. Thank you for bearing with us all this evening as we've been getting inundated with calls and texts on a wide range of topics, and we've been doing our best to take in everyone's feedback ahead of tonight's meeting. I'd like to ask all those who are able to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Confirming we have a quorum tonight, thank you to all my colleagues for joining us in person this evening. I'm going to give us the opportunity to discuss any agenda, additions, deletions, or amendments. I know we have at least one related to our closed session this evening.
Personnel. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to add for our closed session the subject matter of consideration of personnel matters.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Any additional agenda additions, deletions, or amendments from anyone else? All right. Citizen participation. For those who have shown up who would like to speak in general citizen participation tonight, this is where you can talk on any topic that's on your mind. We then also have a public hearing this evening under old business, and that's related to the city tax rate and budget. So if you want to talk specifically about that, that's later this evening. Just make your way over to Awilda Hernandez, City Clerk, and make sure that you've signed up to speak. If you would like to address us on any general topic not related to the tax rate increase, you can do that now, and I'll give folks a minute if they want to make their way over to the city clerk right now. If they have any topics not related to the budget or the taxes they'd like to talk about tonight, go ahead and sign up, and then the city clerk will come over and give me the sheet, and I'll read your name, and then you can come and talk. This is on general topics not related to the budget or the tax rate increase.
So I stay for the budget?
Yes, but you still need to sign up, even if it's later on.
So what time is it later on?
Like in 10 minutes.
But you, I'm having a hard time hearing.
If you make your way to the city clerk, she'll sign you up.
No, I already signed.
Great.
I want to make sure I sign up.
Thank you. I also want to thank all of my colleagues for agreeing to forever move our meetings up to 7 p.m. And we're hearing a lot of positive feedback from residents on that, and from council members. All right, I have one person signed up to speak this evening in our general comment, Mr. Peter Friedrich. Am I pronouncing your last name correctly, sir? Wonderful. The mic is yours for the next 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Well, last week I asked a county executive 20 minutes from here about a hate group that is using his county's public libraries, schools, and parks to build legitimacy for themselves. He told me to get out of his face, and I am here tonight to ask this council the same question, except I am asking before it happens and not after. Does this council vet the organizations that partner with your public libraries, your public schools, your parks facilities? Because the county next door did not. And by the time that they found out who they had partnered with, the books were on the shelves, the commendation was signed, and County Executive Mark Elrich was on camera calling it no big deal. The Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America donated over 160 books to the Germantown Library in Montgomery County and organized a launch event. But a coalition exposed that the VHPA is the self-described sister organization of India's VHP, a violent Hindu nationalist movement implicated in massacres, mosque demolitions, and church burnings. A network so dangerous that a U.S. government commission recommended sanctions on it 2 months ago. The coalition forced the cancellation, but the county shelved the books anyway. This is an organization whose parent network drew inspiration from Nazi Germany, whose affiliates have burned churches and demolished mosques and massacred thousands of Muslims and Christians, and whose ideology the Norwegian white supremacist terrorist Anders Breivik praised as identical to his own. Last summer, a senior leader of that network stood on stage in D.C. alongside Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and told American conservatives that Hindu nationalists and white nationalists share the same enemies. His exact words were, "Remember, the same people call you white supremacists and racists." And one of that network's major American branches is operating in libraries and schools 20 minutes from where you're sitting. You know this playbook, you've seen it with other groups. Donate to a library so that your name is on the shelves, hold events in a school so your presence is normalized. Book a parks facility for a youth camp so you have access to children, get elected officials on the podium so you have a shield, and build legitimacy one partnership at a time until challenging you looks like challenging the community itself. And that is exactly what the VHBA does across the entire DMV. Your city has its own library system, schools, and parks facilities, and nothing stops VHBA from showing up here with the same playbook. And if the last month has taught us anything, it's that they don't stop when they get caught. They just move to the next city. The question is whether this council is paying attention before it happens, or you find out the way Montgomery County found out, after the books are on the shelves and the county executive is telling a journalist to get out of his face. Well, Bowie has something that Montgomery County did not have. You have a warning, you have time, you can start asking questions. Who are they? Where does their money go? What does their parent organization do? Before VHBA shows up at your library with 160 books and a smile. And you can decide tonight that this city will not lend its public institutions to any organization with documented ties to a violent foreign movement, not because of where they come from, but because of what they do. Montgomery County had years of warnings and did nothing, and the question tonight is whether Bowie does something or waits until the only answer your elected officials can give is, get out of my face. And I have information on this for every member of the council. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And staff, just confirming we haven't had any Hindu nationalists attempt to book anything at the Kent Hill Center. Okay. We only have a couple city facilities where folks participate in public events, and usually they're run through City Hall, and I don't think we've had any Hindu nationalist booking requests. Yes, Wilder.
Mayor Steph, there is one resident that signed up by mistake under the budget, and she really wants to be as under citizen participation.
Okay. We can invite that resident to participate right now.
Greetings, Mayor Steve, esteemed council members, and the audience. My name is Lisa Balban. I am a resident of Bowie for the last 29 years. I am a retired teacher administrator in Prince George's County Public Schools and a member of the National Council of Negro Women. I wanted to give some statements about the election, April 7th, because I want to put my comments in context. For instance, April 7th at the Kent Hill Center, statements were being made about making Bowie white again and also taking Bowie back. And in addition, the racist signage referenced by the mayor, free man, TND, which means total nigger death. The swastika is racist, is anti-Semitic, it is anti-American. And I wanted to I'm going to share a quote, but I want to share some of Maryland's history with you that I learned when I moved here 37 years ago. This quote is by Dave Chappelle. Things like racism are institutionalized. You might not know any bigots. You feel like, well, I don't hate black people, so I'm not a racist. But you benefit from racism just by the merit, the color of your skin, the opportunities that you have have privilege in ways you might not even realize because you haven't been deprived of certain things. We need to talk about these things in order for them to change. And so I'm challenging you, Mayor, and the City Council you're on notice today that these things need to be discussed rigorously in this county, in the county and also in the city. As I said, I moved here in 1988. And when I moved here, I was very surprised because I moved here from Louisiana. There was a consent decree to desegregate in 1988, which I was shocked about. So we commenced upon desegregating the public schools, Prince George's County Public Schools. And I just want to share some of the things that I have learned since I moved here. Sacred Heart, for instance, Sacred Heart Catholic Church had to have Archbishop Wilton Gregory from the Diocese of Washington to come and pray over an area because enslaved graves were discovered there. There are many areas in Prince George's County and in Bowie where there are enslaved graves that are not recognized. More recently, well, okay, if we look at the flag of Maryland, Maryland's flag both celebrates the Confederacy and the Union, and it stems from its relationship with both sides of the war. Maryland had the largest tobacco crop produced by slaves in the state. If you look at the Levitt homes that were built in the 1960s, I'm going to continue to speak if you don't mind. Levitt homes built in the 1960s, they were designed for middle-class white people, not blacks. We didn't have that opportunity to move out here. And then if we look at during the election process, before the election, I scanned Nextdoor and had to comment on many racist comments and othering of Councilwoman Roxy Ndebamadu, and they were abhorrent comments. So, and if we just even look at the Supreme Court ruling last week, Louisiana versus Kaye, which further guts the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And yes, it does. Right, okay. And the gerrymandering that President Trump proposed to eliminate black districts all across this country. I watched 60 Minutes last Sunday, and they talked about racist groups that have penetrated American cities and states during times when during times of hurricanes and tornadoes to spill their hate, but in the context that we're bringing you opportunities like to help your home, help rebuild, bringing resources to the community. So this is not something that's going to go away with a comment on Facebook. It has to be an active discussion among, just like we're talking about, taxes increased. This is something that's active. It's happening here. There are over 5 hate groups in Maryland. And so this is something that's not going to go away unless we address it. And, okay, and so my final comment to you is, I like Bowie. I've lived here 29 years, and we gotta meet this head on and speak to it directly and poignantly about how this kind of behavior actually whittles away at the fiber of democracy, and fiber of democracy, and it also attempts to denigrate Black, Brown, and other ethnic groups that live in Bowie and in Prince George's County and in the state of Maryland. So I'm asking you all to deal with this immediately before it continues to fester.
Thank you for your remarks. And I totally agree, and I think everybody on this body agrees. We saw in the last election a lot of really negative comments, including on Nextdoor. We saw people attacking people along many lines, including sexual orientation, religion, place of origin. We saw a lot of really nasty stuff. And as I said the night of the swearing in, and as I said to my colleagues one-on-one over the last 2 weeks, and as we've talked about with city staff and with many folks in the public, this is always going to be an ongoing conversation. You know, to your point, this is something that we always have to work on. So Bowie has a number of groups that are already devoted to this work, and I have reached out to many of the folks associated with that work, and I've asked them to continue to come up with ideas for what we can do to ensure that we continue to create a place that is inclusive and safe and welcoming for all. And I'm grateful for your remarks tonight. Thank you, ma'am. We are now going to move to presentations. Anything on the presentation front, Madam City Clerk?
No, Mayor.
Not tonight. City boards and committees. We have one committee appointment this evening. Mr. Remington, Tennessee, was interviewed on April 20th, 2026 for appointment to the Education Committee. Council concurred to appoint him to the committee as a regular member for a 2-year term. Councilmember Ndebumadu, would you like to appoint Mr. Remington, Tennessee?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to appoint to Mr. Remington, Tennessee as a regular member for a 2-year term of the Education Committee.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Mr. Remington, Tennessee, you are so appointed. I don't see you in the audience. Oh, there you are, hiding in the corner. If you'll come right up to the dais, we'll go ahead and swear you in. Now, I need you to pick one. Do you prefer swear or affirm?
I'll do affirm.
Affirm? Okay, great. We got to stand together or the magic doesn't work. All right, if you'll raise your right hand for me, please. Wonderful. And then just repeat after me. I, and state your name,
I, Remington, Tennessee,
do affirm
do affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of Maryland
to the state of Maryland,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment,
and that I will, to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of
execute the office of
regular member of the City of Bowie Education Committee,
regular member of the City of Bowie Education Committee,
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
Congratulations. If you'll come up. This confirms your appointment. Which, thanks to Wanda Rogers, is now signed by me, Mayor. Thank you for stepping up to serve. We're all going to shake your hand now.
Shake everybody, say that, congratulations.
And I'm going to give you some Purell.
Welcome aboard.
Take some of that. You don't know where we've been. Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, Mr. Tennessee, for offering to step up and serve. The pay and benefits are terrible, but we're grateful to you. We will move to council announcements. I will look first to my left for any announcements from any of my colleagues to my left. I will look to my right for any council announcements to my right.
Ms. Babin made my announcement.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Babin. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. In deference to quite a number of people signed up to this evening to speak, I will have no report.
The people, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Wolfley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just a quick follow-up. It's my understanding that we are investigating the incident at the intersection with the sign.
That is correct, we are.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And to that point, the incident in reference, there was a yard sign or a political road sign at the corner of 450 and Superior that Saturday night, someone put some painter's tape up with messaging that was unambiguously racist and anti-Semitic. The police department got a call. They pulled the painter's tape off as soon as they got the call. The sign looks good as new at this point, so thank you for that. And what we're just asking folks to do, our chief is in touch with county investigators. If anyone has information or saw something or thinks they might have access to a camera that saw something, you're just asked to call 1-866-411-TIPS, and that will get you directly in touch with county investigators who are interested in getting more information. They're taking this seriously. So that's what that's in reference to. I will move us now to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval of the consent agenda.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Consent agenda approved. We now move to the fun business tonight. Old business. We're going to discuss the FY 2027 budget, CIP, and tax rate. Staff will discuss fiscal year 2027 budget and capital improvement programs, and we adopt the tax rate. Just for a little context, by law, this is the deadline by which the city has to specifically adopt the tax rate that we will set for next year's fiscal budget. We have a couple more meetings, and then we formally adopt the budget itself on the night of May 18. After tonight, we can cut things out of the budget, but we cannot add anything to the budget that takes us beyond what we can do vis-a-vis our tax rate. So we can still make some adjustments on the reduction side, but this will be the tax rate for next year. With that, I will turn this over to city staff.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Daniel Mears, Acting City Manager. So this evening, we have before us the city's proposed fiscal year 2027 budget. That is a budget of $98,536,300 in the general fund. As reference was made to our capital improvement program, planning capital improvement expenditures of $11,694,100. The City Council and staff have been going through a number of budget work sessions over the past few weeks, considering not only the recommendations for the expenditures, but also considering the proposed tax rate of 60 cents per $100 of assessed valuation for real property and $1.50 per $100 of assessed value of personal property. With that short summary in place, we turn it over to the City Council, and perhaps we have some folks signed up to speak and comment on the proposed budget as well.
Thank you, staff. I will move us then, City Clerk, to the public hearing.
Mayor, we do have some residents signed up this evening, and just for the record, we did receive a total of 28 comments via email, and those were all forwarded to council, so you'll have the copies for it.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Thank you.
Did you do a pro yes and no count on those? Thank you.
All right. We have about 14 people signed up to speak tonight. What I'll ask is for folks to stay to the 3-minute mark as best as possible. If you get up and you hear someone who's gone before you and you agree with everything they have said, feel welcome to just say, I agree with what they said, but you are still entitled to the full 3 minutes. So with that, I will begin with Miss Erica Coleman.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council people. How are you today? My name is Erica Coleman. I am here today to speak on both a personal and lived experience with the Bowie Mentoring Program and services within Bowie Family Services. These programs didn't just support my family, they helped to hold us together during one of the most difficult experiences that we have to date. When my children lost their father to COVID in 2021, my family was given therapy for family therapy, and my son also signed up through mentorship through both, which became critical to our healing and stability. During a time filled with grief and uncertainty, this program became our village. My son had someone to guide him, to pour into him, and to remind him of his potential when everything around him felt heavy. Today, that same young man is a graduate as of May 28th from Bowie High School and preparing to go into a 4-year college. That didn't happen by chance. It happened because someone invested in him and because the program existed. And I say this with complete honesty, without this village, my son could have gone a very different direction. This is what funding does. It doesn't just support programs, it changes lives. It gives families like mine hope, direction, and real chance at better futures. So I'm not just asking, I am urging you to continue to increase funding for these services because there are other families sitting where I once was, hoping that someone shows up for them too. Please continue to support Bowie Family Services, and please continue to be a part of that village. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks tonight. I have Mary Santa Bigany. And Ms. Bigany, I apologize. I don't know if I've ever seen your first name written down. Did I pronounce that completely wrong?
No, it's completely right unless you're Italian.
Ideal.
Marisanta.
Marisanta, bienvenuto.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff in the Bowie community. My name is Mary Santa DeGregory Bigany. I am a life resident of the city, a doctorally prepared registered nurse, and certified as a firefighter and emergency medical technician with over 40 years of service to the community as a member of the Bowie Volunteer Fire Department and Rescue Squad. Thank you for the opportunity to offer my testimony this evening regarding the FY 2027 budget. My grandmother, Ethel McNamara, served as a member of this esteemed council, as did a longtime member of our department, former Mayor Bill Wildman, both of happy memory. Although the issues they encountered in their terms were in some ways different from those you encounter in the present, I know balancing revenue and expenses was a challenge then and now not taken lightly. I come before you regarding the proposed elimination of a critically important grant that the City of Bowie has provided to our department for several years. I want to speak specifically to the portion of the grant that provides a life insurance benefit for our members. I serve as co-chair of the Memorial Committee at the department, responsible for assisting the families of members in preparing for final arrangements. This past weekend, 204 firefighters who died in the line of duty in this country were recognized in the annual National Fallen Firefighters Memorial in Emmitsburg. Though Bowie, too, has lost members in the line of duty, we are fortunate these types of deaths in our department are rare. Unfortunately, due to our status as volunteers, outside of a line of duty death, there are no provisions for life insurance until a volunteer has reached the age of 55 and has 25 years of active service. Sadly, there are many times when our members die before achieving this requirement. It is only May the 4th, and this year we have already lost 2 members under the age of 41. The grant provides life insurance for all of our active and life members, and in the past 3 years, 11 families of our members have received benefits under our policy. Unlike many things we purchase, one often does not learn the true cost of a funeral until it comes time to make arrangements. And as you might imagine, it's difficult and painful to price shop for the best deal when making a loved one's arrangements. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, in 2023, the median cost in this region of an adult funeral with viewing and burial was $8,023. The median cost for viewing and cremation was $6,103, a 6.1% and 8.1% increase respectively since 2021. This does not include the cemetery costs. Local cemeteries' costs for cremation interment range from $1,770 to almost $5,000, and in-ground burials can range up to $10,000 or $11,000. Plus, there's the cost of the vault. May I continue? I'll be quickly. As a result, the price of a funeral is often close to $15,000. Through the grant, we've been able to provide members up to age 69 with a benefit of $15,000 and those over 70 with a benefit of $7,500, which is a blessing because funeral directors and cemeteries want to be paid before the funeral. I recognize you have many hard decisions to make regarding the budget, what to cut, what to keep, what to add, and whether to increase our taxes. But I respectfully implore you to retain this grant to our department, to permit us to continue our programs and provide life insurance and accidental injury benefits to our volunteers. who willingly give up time with family and friends in their commitment to service as operational or administrative volunteers who care deeply for this community. Thank you for permitting me this opportunity this evening. And thank you for all you do in service of our community.
Thank you, Ms. Bigany. Ms. Millie Hall.
Good evening, Council. Congratulations, Mayor Estaves. My name is Millie Hall. Good evening, Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. In 1997, my family and I came to Prince George's County to purchase land to build a second home. We scheduled a lot in Mitchellville, within the community known as Whitmore Highlands. At the time, we were still residing in Germantown, Maryland. So we visited the site primarily over the weekends while the construction was in process. In September 1998, our home was completed and we came to settlement to move in. During the closing, I noticed that the documentation listed address as Bowie rather than Mitchellville. I questioned this discrepancy as we had built a home in Mitchellville and had not received any prior notification of jurisdiction change. We were told by the realtor that Whitmore Highlands had been annexed into the city of Bowie for tax purposes. Over time, I accepted this change and became invested in the Bowie community and loving it. Wanting to become more engaged, I looked up the dates and times of the city council meeting and I headed over to a meeting. As I arrived at the city council meeting that evening, there was a group of citizens in the area that I encountered. The group of residents was holding signs and chanting, "We want to succeed." I asked a bystander what was taking place and why this group wanted to leave the city. I was told they wished to join Anne Arundel County because blacks were moving into the area. Now, I ask the council to consider this next statement very carefully. On April 7, 2026, 27 years later, at the same location outside a polling place, individual was chanting, "Make Bowie white again." The location has not changed. The message has not changed. Only the years has passed. This history cannot be ignored. As we now discuss proposed tax increase, I respectfully, oops, I lost my, that's what happens when you're on the phone. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Shouldn't hit my phone. Now I ask the council to consider this next statement. On April 7, 2026, 27 years later, at the same location outside a polling place, individuals were chanting, "Make Bowie white again." Can I finish, please? The location has changed. The location has not changed. The message has not changed. Only the years have passed. This history cannot be ignored. As we now discuss proposed tax increase, I respectfully ask the council to acknowledge the broader context and address the underlying concern that many residents continue to experience. Physical responsibility is important, but so is trust, equity, and accountability. There are choices to be made, choices and priorities, expenditures, and resource allocation. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak this evening. Sorry for messing up.
Let's see. Miss Mary Ellen Winland.
Good
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and fellow citizens. I spent time reviewing the proposed budget, and I want to speak to both the content of the budget and the process behind it. First, I'm struggling with the level of clarity being provided. When I look at Anne Arundel County's budget, which is larger and more complex and includes schools and libraries, I can clearly follow where the money is going. There is structure and detail that allows both council and residents to make informed decisions. With our budget, I don't see the same level of transparency. The budget feels more narrative than data-driven, and it's difficult to trace how dollars move from high-level categories down to the actual spending decisions. It also appears that even when additional data is requested, that level of information is not fully provided. At the same time, residents are being asked to absorb what has been estimated, I guess, as roughly $33 per resident per month or something. That is not a small adjustment. That is a meaningful financial impact for many families. And I don't see how council or the public can make a fully informed decision on that increase without fully being able to clearly understand where and why those dollars are needed. But beyond transparency, I'm also concerned about prioritization. I'm not seeing clear evidence that we've asked the harder question, what are we choosing to fund right now? Instead, we are seeing instances when discretionary spending has been expanded rather than constrained. For example, there was recently a request for a poet laureate. Regardless of whether it was a good idea, it was not only approved, but it was increased beyond what was originally requested. That raises a broader concern. Are we applying consistent discipline to spending decisions, especially when we are simultaneously asking residents to pay more? When discretionary requests are expanded rather than constrained, it becomes difficult to demonstrate that every dollar has been fully scrutinized. Finally, I want to speak about the process. From a public perspective, it feels like this budget has not been fully worked through before reaching this point. Watching the recent budget session, there were still significant decisions unresolved, yet the previous meeting concluded without clear direction. That was disappointing to see, not because of any one decision, but because it gave the impression that the process is being compressed at the very moment when it needs to, when it requires the most care and deliberation. When residents are being asked to absorb a meaningful increase, we need to have the confidence that every opinion has been thoroughly evaluated, every trade-off considered, and that decisions are being made with full transparency and intention. Right now, I don't think that confidence has been established. I understand that the city is required to adopt a budget within the next few weeks and make a decision today about the increase, but that requirement does not mean it must be this budget in its current form. If the level of detail, prioritization, and deliberation is not where it needs to be, I urge you to consider an alternative approach, whether it's scaling back, deferring non-essential spending, or adopting a more conservative version that can be revisited with greater transparency. If we don't yet have the clarity to justify the increase, then we should not be locking it in. Thank you.
Miss Linda Tucker.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Linda Tucker. I've been a Bowie resident for nearly 30 years. I'm here tonight because families in this city are being asked to make an impossible choice, and they shouldn't have to. A 20-cent tax increase is not a small adjustment. For many households, that's groceries, that's medication, and that's staying in their home. And the truth is, this didn't happen overnight. For years, we've been warned. For years, we've relied on reserves instead of making tough decisions, and now residents are being asked to pay the price all at once. That's not responsible governance. That's kicking the can down the road. But here's the bigger issue: trust. Residents don't trust the process. They can't see it. We're being asked to accept a major tax increase without clear line-by-line transparency, without a real conversation about what is a need versus a want, and without being meaningfully included in the decision. That needs to change, because accountability resides not with the staff, but with you, the council. And leadership means making decisions out in the open where residents can see them, understand them, and have a voice. So here's what I'm asking. Before any budget is finalized, provide residents with a clear, transparent breakdown of spending, real numbers, not summaries. Hold public discussions on where adjustments can be made, not behind closed doors, but within the community. And commit to a path forward where we never end up in this position again, where we plan responsibly, spend wisely, and include residents in every step of the way. Bowie families are not asking for perfection. They're asking for honesty, they're asking for accountability, and they're asking to be part of decisions that affect their daily lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tucker. Mr. Lee Havens.
Mr. Mayor, Council, City staff, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the Fire Chief of the Bowie Fire Department. I've been an active member for 46 and a half years. Lifelong resident. This is my 4th term of running as a fire chief. But I'm going to rehash some of it. We had a meeting on the 12th with Public Safety Director. It was attended by myself, the President of the Bowie Fire Department, and Chief Deputy Harris. We discussed staffing that the county can provide, where they're at in their staffing, and how they reducted staffing. And that was it. There wasn't a promise to have a staffing. So our corporation is 3 corporations: South Bowie, Free State Mall, and Old Bowie. We're responsible for all 3, but we took in the last couple of years and tried to push everybody to 39 to staff. And I can tell you, the last time I pushed a lot of rules, and I can go in, it's going to take me more than 3 minutes. I really like the better time to prepare this, but the training and all that's required to do it, it's gone from 200 hours 30 years ago to over almost 600, just to put a firefighter on a street in 3 years. So the process of doing that and onboarding them, the county's changed the CB 83 law to change the training standards. It puts a lot of parameters in what we have to push out. The support that you all give us, we have a training center that's operated by there. The county uses it every day, a week, and offers classes to us. The big thing is MIFRE and producing the classes. We have members, not just operational. Right now, our fit test list is probably a little below 50. I think it's about 40, and we have to push that out to get them. The big thing is not our recruitment. We onboarded 90 people, but whether to get them through the system, it's our retention. And that's one of the things. I came back in March, and as staff, I have Chief Howard here. He was in before me. We're working together. I'm holding more people accountable to see where we go. And I'd like the opportunity. I could prepare a better report. And my plan is to get up and meet with you guys once. Mr. Brady, I've known you long, since '99, since I was a chief the first time then. So I understand what it takes to be informed and keep you informed, and I plan on doing that. We have a lot of great people in the organization, the auxiliary staff, the support staff we have. We do a lot of outside programs, not just, our mission is to provide that service in there, and we've been doing it with the county there. We've hit the road, they had to take staff in, and it's just been hard for us to climb back. It's not just a problem in Bowie, it's across the county, through the United States. And to get volunteers, I don't push the people anymore because they have to take care of their families. They got to do 2 jobs. We're 4th or 5th in the line, even church. I stress that. Don't take away from that, because I did it my whole life and I lost a lot of things. I mean, it was just there, but it's critical and you can't force it. So we have a lot of people give 1 day there. We're just trying to build back to reach that goal. And that's one of the things. I know the president's going to discuss a little more. And that's it. I just wanted to top off there, but I'll provide more information. And I'm not going to stop. I'll communicate with you guys once a month, twice. I'll communicate with the public safety director. That's my plan, to just keep it going and do what we can do. And I hope for your support, and I thank you for the time to speak. I know the president has a lot of stuff to go over, and I appreciate the time and look forward to meeting with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Miss Kathleen Parker. Kathleen.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. I'm Kathleen Parker. I'm chairman of the City of Bowie Arts Committee, and I would like to speak this evening about cuts that are being proposed to the 2026-2027 Arts Committee budget. I have heard that the scholarship program that the Arts Committee administers is being considered for elimination in the 2026-2027 budget. I hope that the council will reconsider this action and not eliminate this program that offers graduating high school seniors who live in Bowie and will be attending a post-high school program in an arts-related field the chance to apply for a small amount of assistance with their continuing education. Continuing the arts scholarship and the education scholarships as well that are currently available to graduating high school seniors shows that the City of Bowie is committed to the future of the youth that live here in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kathleen. Mr. Dwayne Graves.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are you? My name is Dwayne Graves, and I've been a resident of Bowie for 31 years. I'm here today to, I guess, speak up about this budget. Now, I listened to several people come up, and one resounding statement is transparency and clarity on how things are being spent. So I'm asking, we have to have a concise budget process, and a rush to budget is never concise because it's rush, it's getting it in, getting it out, and then all of a sudden we're stuck to what we have. So there are some critical infrastructure costs. We need to know where the money for those infrastructure expenditures are coming from and how are we going to achieve it. I understand that North Bowie has a water problem, okay? Where's that money coming from, right? If there's a partnership between the state or the county and Bowie, let's hear it. Okay, let's have some transparency. And unfortunately, there's no referendum for recall in the city, but there's, there needs to be some consequences for elected officials not abiding by what the citizens want. And if they're going to be forced to take a 20% tax increase, I don't think the referendum on taxing would pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. Miss Ann Johnson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Ann Johnson. I'm a lifelong resident of the Huntington section of Old Bowie and a member of the Old Bowie Arts and Heritage Committee. I am here to urge the council to continue funding the Old Bowie Celebrates Festival in October. It is important to continue funding the event for several reasons. The most important reason is community. The festival represents community. It allows the citizens to come together for a day of fun, food, and companionship. People can release tensions in a productive way. Sometimes we have to be willing to make an investment that pays off in the future. Old Bowie Celebrates is an investment. How much is the city willing to invest in its citizens? Sometimes the investment has to be more than for profit. We have to look to the future and what preserving community means. The council was told that the Old Bowie Celebrates Festival costs more than 3 current events combined: Bowie Fest, June 10th, Juneteenth, and International Festival. The council has missed the point. Those activities are held on an enclosed city property, which means the city doesn't incur the same expenses as Old Bowie celebrates. They don't have to close roads or streets or allow for their employees to work extra because it is within their normal operations. It is unfair to compare our costs with their costs. The city has a built-in stage and plenty of parking. The mayor stated that there are two options available to the committee. One, let the city run it for profit, or two, the committee could get sponsors. The first option doesn't work because that would not meet the goals of the committee to bring the arts to Old Town Bowie. For many years, the citizens have been working on revitalizing the community. If the city takes over, that would not be their goal. As for getting sponsorships, that would not work because the problem of utilizing city amenities and labor would not be addressed. The committee is willing to revisit its budget and reevaluate the size of the event, but we ask the council to reevaluate its assessment of the budget for the festival and continue to work with us for a continued celebration of Old Bowie, past, present, and future. Remember, community is the key. Concern for its citizens, opportunity to meet and socialize, manage the quality of events, manage the present, unite for the good of all, necessary for growth, involvement and investment, transformative for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Mr. James Bigany.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and the Bowie community. My name is James Bigany, and I'm the president of the Bowie Volunteer Fire Department. I'm a lifelong resident of the city and have been in the department for the last 17 years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening regarding the FY 2027 budget. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to the survey the city released on April 21st regarding the budget and watched proceedings from the work sessions last week. As you might expect, I was shocked to hear the decision to strike our funding from the upcoming budget. We recognize the need to take a deep dive, but we had no idea that the recommendation would be that our grant be eliminated, and as a result, elimination of services to the community and our members that are funded by it. Our department uses that grant to provide the following: CPR training for its members and of the community and other public safety organizations. We had 225 citizens through the program last year. Fire Prevention Day and our annual open house. For those that have been in Bowie for a long time, that event is every October at our station on Annapolis Road. Training for our members, administrative expenses for fundraising. So without this money, we wouldn't be able to afford to have a fundraising company help us with our main fundraiser. Membership, life insurance that was already spoken about, insurance for vehicles. So without this, we'd have to sell those vehicles, including 2 antique fire trucks from 1964, as well as repairs to stations. Recognize that budget decisions are difficult and addressing deficits is a necessary priority. However, we want to make you aware that you and the council aware that as an organization, this decision will directly affect our ability to function as a department and provide services to the residents of Bowie. If this is eliminated, we will be forced to reduce or eliminate many of our activities, including those previously mentioned. Like the city of Bowie, the Bowie Fire Department is also managing decreased income and ever-increasing costs. Donations to our fund programs have significantly decreased over the years, making the grant we receive from the city even more critical to our operation. It was mentioned during the budget work session last week that Prince George's County is responsible for all administrative oversight of the stations and for budgeting for them. That is only partially correct in the sense that the county provides each of our stations a very small amount of funds, about $37,000, and that's in total between 2 of the 3. We don't have time to talk about the third. The county does not provide financial support to the department as a whole other than for utilities for those stations, maintenance on heavy apparatus that does not include the 2 department-owned ambulances, and some minor station repairs that can take weeks, if not months, to complete. Again, thank you for the time to speak this evening and for your continued commitment to the city of Bowie. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let's see. Ms. Warren Brown, or Mr. Warren Brown. Mr. Brown, I am going to need you to just sign up here, though, before you speak. Is that all right? That's fine. Just walk on up, and I'll let you sign this. Of course, sir. I've been called that, so no harm. And I'm writing your name, Warren Brown, W-A-R-E-E-N, right? Okay. Do you mind just writing your street name there? It's just for the record.
No problem. How are you today?
I'm doing good, sir. Thank you for coming.
Great to be here.
Okay. That's perfect. Thank you, sir. And then you got the mic for the next 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
I'm looking for a contribution.
We're being generous tonight with the public speaking, given the gravity of the topic, but I want to be clear, this is not a precedent. But given the importance of what we're doing tonight, I want to make sure people can be heard. So thank you for coming out, sir.
First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak at this moment, and I hope God continues to give you all the strength and wisdom to help not only yourselves, but the city as well, people that represent you. I come forth today to address the issue about the increase in property taxes. Yes, we have to have some type of property tax, that's a given. But is it time? Is this the right time to do that based on the economy? We have an increase in everything across the board. And those who just purchased a home, it's not in their budget. It's going to be not cost effective for them. So all I'm asking with that, if we can just table that for another year or term to revisit at another time. That's my main thing. If we could just address that, think about it seriously, and look at it across the board and weigh it out against how the economy is flowing now, especially in what affects all of us, gas prices, foods, etc. So an increase in that on our properties on top of that, it's going to hurt a lot of people. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Miss Alethea Smalls. Aletha Smalls, second call. Oh, I see someone hurrying in. Hi, ma'am, the mic is all yours for the next 3 minutes. Come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members and Bowie residents. My name is Alethea Smalls. I've lived here for a couple of decades, and I want to share a little bit of what my children and I, and my husband, of course, our thoughts are about this budget. The current proposal would raise the city's property tax rate from 40 cents to 60 cents per $100 of assessed value, a 50% increase in the city rate. This increase is far out of step with the financial reality facing residents. You create a situation where costs are rising far faster than income. That gap puts real pressure on working families, seniors like myself on fixed incomes, and first-time homeowners trying to stay in this community. Almost 1 out of 5 residents of the city, about 20%, are 65 and over, relying on fixed incomes. In the Prince George's County FY budget, the proposed general fund, there already is a 6.2% projected growth without the proposed tax increase. A tax increase of this scale will push current residents out and make the city of Bowie less accessible. I ask the council to consider a more measured approach, one that aligns with income growth, protects residents from sudden financial strain, and ensure Bowie residents remain a place people can afford to call home. I also think that the current financial climate should be addressed. Like, why now does this make sense? Costs are rising everywhere. Why does the city think now is the time to put even more stress on its residents? What alternatives were considered prior to the tax increase? And why is a phased approach not being taken? I ask you to consider these points. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smalls. Ms. Diane Pisano.
Good evening. I've been living in Bowie for nearly 40 years, and I agree with everything that everybody has said. I think they're absolutely right. But I think that over time, we have not been given the opportunity to be conscious of our expenses, so we haven't been asked to go ahead and change the taxes little by little. Instead, we've been told that we will have to change it extraordinarily. That's okay. I got a raise from Social Security this year of $52 a month. So I will be able to cover that $33 a month that will come out of my taxes. I don't know about the health insurance, and I don't know about the car insurance, and I don't know about the Medicare dividend that's coming out, but I'll be able to afford that tax deduction. And it'll be really nice because I won't be awakened in the middle of the night by the volunteer fire department who comes whistling by when they come to pick up some of my neighbors. Sometimes they only come with just the light going, but sometimes they really have to use the siren. And I'll like it when they don't do that because they won't be there. That'll be good. And I also think that it's very disrespectful when that telephone keeps ringing near the end of everybody's speech. I think you ought to put that phone on silence, maybe even airplane mode. Thanks, that's all.
That's everyone I have signed up to speak for the evening. We will declare the public hearing concluded.
I didn't speak.
Did you sign?
She did something.
Come on up, Ms. Sand.
Second page.
Okay, come on up.
They did the second page. What's the second page? So first I want to say, please talk closer to your microphone so I can hear you. I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Okay. I'm also like that nice young lady that was up here. I got a great big raise from Social Security too, so we may be able to eat beans this month. I want to read something to you, and I hope you get the message. Davy Crockett, we remember who he is. He died at the Alamo, but he was a congressman for many years. 9 years, actually. And during one of these years, a fire broke out in Georgetown, a suburb of Washington, and many of the congressmen, including Crockett, helped fight the blaze. The next morning, the Congress voted for $20,000 to assist those whose homes were destroyed. Now, that was a lot of money back then. Okay. Crockett voted for it. However, when he went home, he found himself in deep trouble with one of his constituents named Horatio Bunce. Bunce commended him for the anxiety to help the victims of the fire, but scolded him for using other people's money as charity. He challenged Crockett to find where the Constitution allowed Congress to spend 1 penny of other people's money for charity. Crockett couldn't think of any such provision. Bunce told him he had a right to help with his own money, but not with other people's money. Crockett returned to Congress and ran into a similar situation. Congress wanted to give a substantial sum to the widow of a distinguished naval officer who had just died. Crockett took the floor, and he said, "Mr. Speaker, I have as much sympathy as any man in the House, but Congress has no power to appropriate this money in an act of charity. Every member upon this floor knows it. We have the right, as individuals, to give away as much of our own money as we please in charity. But as members of Congress, we have no right to appropriate any dollar of public money. Mr. Speaker, I have said we have the right to give as much money as our own as we please. I am the poorest man on the floor. I cannot vote for this bill, but I will give 1 week's pay to the object, and if every member of Congress will do the same, it will amount to more than this bill asks." Crockett took his seat. The bill was defeated, but even though some of the congressmen were very wealthy, not one of them came forward to take up Crockett's offer to donate a week's salary to the widow as a gesture of private charity. Okay, there's a difference between forcing people to support luxuries, things we've talked about, like the Playhouse, the art grants, the rebates. You're being charitable with our money. And according to this story, that's not right. Things are going to hurt. We're in a jam. We can hurt by taking away some of the luxuries that we really don't need, or we can keep the luxuries and we can hurt in our own homes by cutting our budgets. I don't know where I'm going to cut my budget. We may be eating beans 3 times a night. So it's either going to hurt, how do I say this, the private citizen in their home, or we just have to do without some of the luxury items. Hopefully, it's only temporary until we get back on our feet. But I don't, oh, that's the bell? Oh, doggone. But I don't think I should be paying for a playhouse that I never go to. Forced to pay to a playhouse I never go to. That's just financial slavery. And my time is up, and I guess that's all I'm allowed to say. Just remember Davy Crockett. I'm sorry, what? Remember the Alamo. That's right. It was a good draft.
Is there anyone else who signed up who I may have missed who would like to speak? Okay. I will declare the public hearing concluded. All right, I will start out tonight by, first off, thanking everybody who took the time to come out this evening. As you are all aware, the city began working on its annual budget the night of our mayoral swearing in about 2.5 weeks ago. As you also are likely aware, in particular for those of you who signed up to my newsletters, you know that we went into this budget year facing a $20 million shortfall, the size of our entire police department. When the city started its budget cycle, we had 4 work sessions scheduled. We are having the 4th one tonight. We added 2 public in-person listening sessions. We did a public review of $5.9 million line by line in proposed cuts from city staff. Council adopted a little over of half of those, and several of the people whose items we cut were here tonight asking us to either restore those items or grow them or put some money back. And for the record, the audience applauded every single one of those.
Say that again.
We had an open feedback survey that got over 1,800 replies, and council collectively probably received several hundred emails and calls from constituents. I am very grateful to everyone who made themselves heard throughout this process. And as folks noted tonight, by law, we must adopt the tax rate tonight. For those of you who have been following my communications for a while, You'll know that several of us have been raising the alarm bells for many years now, many years now, many years now, about the fast-growing cost of city services, driven not entirely, but largely by growth in our police department. The short version is the city created its own department from scratch in a vote in 2006, and we never sufficiently raised the taxes to pay for them. We went from 0 to 66 officers. This year, I believe we have a total of 92 staff, including civilians, in our police department. Staffing our own dispatch center, providing and participating in significant training, consuming exorbitant equipment costs, as police tend to do, utilizing modern facilities, all to the tune of about $20 million today. For years, the city was able to pay for all this growth, thanks mostly to growth in our tax base, and by eating steadily into our large reserve fund. Pandemic spending, which was generous, helped cover some of our costs all the way through our 2025 budget. But for many budgets now, in fact, going back to 2006, you can find city staff issuing almost the identical warning that this path was not sustainable, and in recent years, it was especially not sustainable as equipment and personnel costs started to grow faster than the rate of inflation. As one example that our previous city manager raised, a trash truck that cost $120,000 just a few years ago costs over $280,000 today. In multiple budget cycles, the city passed on opportunities for little tax increases that could have steadily righted the ship. It also chose to add millions of dollars in additional spending over the last several years, all of it at the request of residents. But over the last several years, the City Council started to retire the word no. At the end of the day, city elected leaders simply didn't want to raise taxes, and no one can blame them. Nobody likes tax increases, big or small. Unfortunately, over time, the council ignored the many warnings of staff, and now this year, the city has zero fund balance. There is simply no additional money available for us to borrow or dip into to fund our budget this year, and that is even with the 20-cent tax rate increase. With an end to generous pandemic funds, the federal, state, and county all facing growing budget deficits of their own, and the fact that our federal-dependent local economy is stagnating. A lot of it for political reasons at the federal level, the music has simply stopped. And we face a police department-sized hole in our budget with no reserve funds to help. The city will finally have to raise taxes to pay for its police. About $67 per household, by some other math, about $33 per resident per month. This merely stops the bleeding and ensures we can pay our bills. It is not enough to replenish our reserves or take on any new projects or new ideas, but it does buy us some time. It allows us to get through this year and start making the changes necessary to get us back on track. The City Council in a recent meeting reviewed $5.9 million in proposed cuts to existing programs and services to help ease our costs. Council accepted about $3.8 million in those proposed cuts. These savings could be used either to help start to replenish our reserve fund or help ease the tax rate increase by a little bit, 1, 2, maybe 2.5 cents. Among these cuts were the complete elimination of grants and scholarships, some staff reductions at the senior center, museums, communications, and city manager's office, scaling back some city programs events, eliminating a grant to our volunteer fire department, as well as cuts to certain subscriptions and reducing the cost of printing and certain supplies. Overall, between our 4 budget work sessions, not including tonight's, and 2 public listening sessions, this council has participated in about 18 hours on public television, having these discussions, making these decisions. One thing I learned that surprised me this budget cycle, eliminating twice-a-week trash would save us only half of 1 cent on our tax rate. Not nothing, but a lot less than a lot of us expected. This is mostly because people would still produce the same amount of trash. Tipping fees would be roughly the same. We would need to eliminate a whole host of public works services, including bulk, special pickup, and vacuum leaf collection, as well as others, before we would start seeing the accumulated savings that would make a noticeable difference on our tax rate. And so tonight, our choice is fairly straightforward. We can either adopt the full tax rate increase, preserve just about all of our core services. We could do some of the tax rate increase and still have to eliminate other services. Think pretty much all city events, all the museums, youth and family counseling, all of our environmental work. Or no tax increase at all, in which case we're talking about the elimination of an entire department, the size of our police department, roughly. Over these last several weeks, I've been reflecting on my own relationship with Bowie and its local government. It's dawned on me that I use very few city services in my own personal life. I produce enough trash pickup for maybe pickup once every other week. I don't use the senior center, the Bowie gym, the city bus. I don't use the community gardens. I don't use the family counselors. I'm pretty much only at City Hall, the Kent Hill Center, the museums, the Playhouse, the ballparks, and Allen Pond when I'm there as a local official. In my personal capacity, I've called the police department once in my whole life. I've called animal control twice because my neighbor's parakeets keep getting out. They've been returned safely. Thank you, animal control. I have never once called the code compliance office on my own behalf. I've called them several times to relay other people's complaints in other parts of town. When my neighbor's music is loud, I knock on their door, I ask them to turn it down. Now, a lot of this is because I have the good fortune of being relatively young. I'm blessed with good health. I'm a relatively low-maintenance person. If this city were built around my needs, we would have 1/5 the staff and need only about 1/4 of the property tax rate. And speaking just for myself, I would be perfectly content with that trade-off. But if there's one thing I've learned in 36 years of living here, 20 being active in local civics, and 10 in elected office, it's that Bowie serves far many more people than just me, with priorities, needs, and wants often very different from my own. And that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. That is what local government is for, to provide the services people want, voted for through their local elected representatives, and paid for through their taxes. And the reality is, most Bowie residents really genuinely love the services this city provides. I suspected residents, by and large, would be okay with the idea of some tax rate increase this year. But I was stunned at the listening sessions, by the emails, the calls, by the sheer number of people who have explicitly repeated to me some version of, just raise the taxes, keep my services good. Moreover, and we saw some of this tonight, a lot of people came out of the woodwork to defend even those platinum services that many of us would think would be obvious cuts. We heard a lot of people defending twice-a-week trash, especially when they heard how little we'd save by eliminating it. A lot of people reached out to defend vacuum leaf pickup, including some residents who asked that we not raise the tax rate. We heard a lot of people come out and speak on behalf of the free counseling we provide to youth in Bowie. We heard defenses for all of our support of the arts. And even among the residents who reached out to say they really wish the taxes wouldn't go up at all, almost none offered more than maybe $100,000 or $200,000 worth of cuts they were prepared to accept. And many even suggested several million more dollars they felt the city urgently needed to take on, often a mix of more senior housing or more law enforcement or more code compliance officers. People often tell me how much Bowie has changed over the years, and in many ways it has. But what has remained a constant is that most residents in most parts of the city love that Bowie stands apart for its service delivery. I had a neighbor who returned from Florida recently after several years living away, and she said to me, "You really don't know what you miss until you move somewhere else and truly realize you only get what you pay for." In a personal capacity, I'm not eager to raise taxes. I'm already not a huge spender, and my household would benefit from lower bills across the board. But the fact is, residents over many years have spoken loud and clear. The kind of cuts we would need to avoid any tax rate increase are just too large and eliminate too many of the services Bowie residents tell us over and over and over again they want. We're here in large part because years ago, we created a police department and just never fully paid for it. And it is a small department. A town our size could do with twice as many officers as we have right now. We want our AAA bond rating to be protected. We fought very hard to protect it. Losing it would increase our future borrowing costs. And even with the 20-cent tax rate increase, we will still have the 10th lowest municipal tax rate in Prince George's County, well behind Laurel, well behind Greenbelt. And while I love many people in both those towns, I think our services are quite competitive with theirs, even with the lower tax rate. My council colleagues deserve a lot of credit. We crammed a lot into a short 2.5-week period, including a lot of feedback. We haven't always agreed, and we won't agree tonight, and that's okay. My promise to folks is that at the end of the day, we would listen, we would make sure people felt heard, and more importantly, we would not let tonight be the end of the conversation. We may have a deadline on the tax rate vote, but we don't have a deadline on fiscal responsibility. We don't have a deadline on public outreach. We don't have a deadline on hearing from you. My colleagues proposed in recent meetings, and I'm completely on board with having a regular cadence of meetings where this body gets together with staff, with some advisory members among former city personnel, potentially with members of the public, where we on a continuing basis evaluate new revenue opportunities, evaluate existing programs and services, and without being constrained by the deadline that we were stuck with this cycle, have meaningful, detailed conversations about what we can eliminate, what we can keep, and what we're willing to pay for the services we expect. And I think all of my colleagues are prepared to undertake that work on an ongoing basis going forward, because for better or for worse, we do budget every year, and there is a lot that we can do to prepare ourselves for next year so that people feel completely heard, completely included, and have the confidence that we are making budget decisions in the future that truly reflect the best representation of the will of our residents. I want to say thank you again to you, and thank you to my colleagues. And with that, I know that several of my colleagues have thoughts of their own this evening and suggestions that they would like to bring up. So I will start on my far left with...
Just a question.
Oh.
A quick question.
Councilmember Brady, you'd like to start us off?
Yes, just for the starting point, would you entertain a motion? Excuse me. Entertain a motion to adopt staff's recommended 20-cent tax rate.
So there's been a motion and a second to accept the 20-cent tax rate increase as proposed by staff. Does that include the $3.8 million in cuts from last Monday? Or just the tax rate?
It's just the tax rate.
Just the rate? Okay. I hear a motion, I hear a second. Are there any questions on the motion? None? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye? All nay?
Nay.
Nay.
That's 3-3.
Well,
The motion fails.
no.
No, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't understand the question.
Okay, well, I heard a motion fail just now.
Mr. Mayor, can you entertain a roll call vote, please?
No, the motion has failed.
The motion what?
The motion has failed.
Okay, okay.
So I needed clarity on the question.
Question was, do you support in favor of the proposed 20 cent?
I am not in favor of the proposed 20-cent
Okay.
tax increase.
Okay, so.
I am not in favor.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So with that, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You're going to go down the line, right? Just go ahead.
All right, Councilmember Ndebumadu.
Sorry, I was answering a question. Can you please repeat your comment?
Do you have any comments or proposals for us to consider tonight? So we just had a vote on the full 20-cent tax rate. That failed. So now I'm turning it over to colleagues to offer ideas, thoughts, suggestions.
I'll defer to my colleagues first.
Okay, Councilmember Truesdale, anything from you, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. I kind of echo the last lady that shared. That was a great analysis. I come from a family that grew up eating syrup sandwiches and government cheese, and we made it good. We made it. I really feel that this is just a distraction in terms of our purpose and where we can go as a city. I look at my district, District 3, as being a district as a special tax district that would take strong accountability and framework around the proposed tax rate increase. This increased proposal could trigger a lot of foreclosures that could reduce even less of a chance to recoup taxes if residents go back into a foreclosure crisis. Cost effective in the district I serve, communities, you're looking at 1,200 to 1,500 annually, above and beyond what we're already paying now. I have had several conversations with my colleagues collectively as well as one-on-one, and I'm open into sharing additional leveraging decisions which my colleagues brought to light, and not to take anyone's thunder. So I know we have conversations that we're going to be talking, and that's one of the main reasons in terms of I do not support the tax increase at that rate. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. It's, I think Dr. Ahn said it, difficult times call on difficult decisions, and we are facing them through no fault of our own over 15 years. If you look at this, our tax rate has stayed flat, even while from 2011 to today, even while staff repeatedly recommended small incremental increases to the tax rate that would have kept our reserves up. It would have covered a lot. We still have a stagnant economy. We still have challenges with that. I'm optimistic, and I see what we're dealing with today as a bump in the road. And believe me, when you put speed bumps on streets, neighborhood streets, you get a lot of people coming out and complaining about them. You get others that come out and praise them. So I'm hoping that this is a very small speed bump. We need to figure out how best to manage and move forward. I did not support and cannot support the full 20 cents. We've identified savings, and hopefully through efficiencies we can, but unfortunately we need to adopt a budget, and tonight we need to establish a rate. I have one question of staff before I continue with Mr. Miller. Last week you made a comment relative to our reserve fund and how lenders and rating organizations look at it. And I think your comment was that we should have a plan to replenish it but you didn't say that it had to be a certain dollar value or we needed to contribute a certain amount to it. Did I misunderstand your comments from last week?
Tell you the truth, I know I said it's basically about 15 to 20% of your expenditures. That would also, and I would point more to the 20% of undesignated fund balance. You have to look at the undesignated portion of that, because that's where you have the flexibility.
Right.
And it's the flexibility, the budgetary flexibility, the liquidity, if you will, that the rating agencies are looking for.
Okay.
And so I would point to 20%. You want all the different fund balances, designated, undesignated, et cetera, et cetera. You want to be a little bit, you want to be north of 30%. So that's the benchmark that I would recommend the city moving towards.
Right. Okay. I thank you for that. And I know the value of the undesignated fund reserve because it paid for the senior center and it paid for the gymnasium when we built them. I do have a couple of recommendations, and I'll start with the one that I'm extremely reluctant to do. I see this as, I previously said, a speed bump, and it's something that can have an immediate impact today, but we need to commit to restoring the funds. And I would suggest that we, there's a $2 million transfer to the equipment acquisition fund for future purchases. I would suggest that that be zeroed out for this year, and we use that as at least a 2-cent reduction in the tax rate for the citizens. And then subsequent to our efforts with this budget, and I've got a proposal here that if the mayor will bear with me, we need to establish a plan to deal with the reserve funds, with the equipment acquisition funds, and how we conduct oversight with the budget. So that is my recommendation. I'd ask for consensus on that.
I do have one quick question for staff. So Councilmember Brady suggests not contributing to the equipment acquisition replacement fund to the tune of $2 million this year, and instead using that to prevent the taxes from going up roughly 2 additional cents. To the earlier point that Councilmember Brady raised about replenishing the reserve fund and specifically making sure that we don't lose our AAA bond rating, and I ask you, staff, would not contributing to our equipment acquisition replacement fund potentially present a problem as we try to get to a point where credit ratings agencies don't downgrade us?
At the end of the day, when you transfer that to that fund, as suggested, you're taking $2 million out of your budget. By taking that $2 million out of the budget, you're creating a structural deficit so that next year you're going to have to find, everything else being equal, find that additional $2 million. So that places a difficulty, hardship, whatever that word is. But again, there's that structural deficit within the budget. The rating agencies will see exactly, they're going to be looking at the budget and potentially, and they're going to see the shift from the acquisition fund to the general fund, the undesignated portion. That's a great move, but again, it's the overall picture that they're going to be looking at, and they're going to see that the one was depleted for sake of the other, basically a wash. So I don't know relatively if you're gaining any real estate by that move. Again, my concern, quite frankly, is again the structural deficit that you're going to have to be looking at in fiscal year 28 now.
Gotcha. So what I hear you saying is we've zeroed out a reserve fund, and this proposal would also create a deficit in yet another fund that we would then have to fill through either more cuts or future tax rate increases. So this is effectively kicking the can further down the road in yet another fund.
Correct.
And it doesn't help with the AAA bond rating. In fact, it may make it a little worse.
Well, I'm reluctant to speak on behalf of the rating agencies because, they're independent. But again, just by experience, and in conversations, et cetera, they would see the shift from a designated fund, which is for future capitalization costs, to a unrestricted fund balance. But the bigger issue is, again, the creation of that structural deficit, and you haven't gotten anywhere addressing the structural deficit.
And we've saved maybe $9 a month in resident property taxes to do that, if my back of the napkin math is right.
Well, you're saving 2 cents.
Okay.
Each $1 million is a penny.
Okay, gotcha. I'll turn it over to my colleagues on the right. Councilmember Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to thank the mayor and the council. This has not been an easy process, but people have stepped up, they've been open, and they've been receptive, and I appreciate that. And also, we have our staff sitting out there that's listening with bated breath as to what their future may look like based on the decisions that we make up here from the dais. But let me just talk a little bit about my thoughts. First, I'm going to qualify why I feel as if I can make these comments. And for those that don't know, I spent my federal career in a senior executive position where I oversaw the daily operations with direct budget appropriations of over $300 million annually and a permanent and indefinite appropriation of over $1 billion, dispersing over $2 trillion in payments annually. Moving 4.5 million Americans to electronic payments, processing almost $4 trillion in revenue, worth nearly $145 billion, and settling nearly $3.9 trillion in revenue through electronic funds transfer, awarding almost $7 trillion in Treasury marketable securities, and servicing $26.9 billion in savings and marketable securities, collecting over $7 billion in delinquent debt, and over $500 million in state unemployment insurance debt on behalf of 42 states in the District of Columbia. I share that because I want you to know that I understand what's going on up here. I understand what's going on with our budget. I heard several words from people that were making comments during this evening. I heard data. I heard data transparency. I heard accountability. And I heard discipline when approving discretionary spending. So what I did is I kind of put on my fiscal hat and tried to look on the out years because I'm not a tactical or transactional thinker. I am a strategic thinker. So I look at a long term. When you look at the bigger picture long term, it makes it clearer. So my concept is Bowie 2030, and this would be a phased, accountable approach to property taxes. So what we would start with is the reality of what's going on today. The city is facing a structural budget challenge and not a one-time issue. So the conversation about moving from one fund to another, it's still a structural problem. And my real concern about moving out very quickly on this is because I don't know and I cannot foresee the unintended consequences of quick decision-making. I just can't. So a significant adjustment is necessary to maintain our core services, and you heard the mayor talk about everybody wants to keep their core services, but this is not business as usual. The other one is rebuilding our reserves responsibly, and the third is to avoid deeper financial instability. So this is about long-term sustainability, not a short-term patch or fix. And one of my major concerns was looking at things to cut without having full knowledge and understanding of the data that was being presented to me. So as far as the 20% is concerned, I think the 20% may be too much if we do not want to run into a structural problem in out years. What it does, it places a significant and immediate burden on the residents. It assumes we have already done everything possible to control spending, to improve efficiency, and to diversify our revenue. And at this moment, we cannot confidently say that the work is complete. I know I can't, and I know folks have worked very hard over the last several weeks. People have taken this very seriously. What I'm thinking about is a more balanced approach, maybe a disciplined strategy. At first I thought, well, maybe a 10% cut this year and a 10% next year. But when I thought it through, it did not make sense, because what that tells anybody in this room or outside this room is that we're really not taking it that seriously. And these are serious times, and we need to take them seriously. So what I was looking at was maybe a 15% cut this year and a 5% cut next year. To me, we could balance it and we can make it disciplined. The 15% increase would provide meaningful and immediate revenue, reduces the reliance on our reserves, and helps stabilize the budget. That's in year one. In year two, that 5% increase, and it would not be an automatic increase. It would be considered only after reviewing the financial performance of the city and based on results and not assumptions. So this is a phased report, so a phased approach. So the 15% first is large enough to address the current deficit responsibly. It avoids excessive short-term cuts in services, overdependence on one-time financial fixes, and that's what we've been doing, trying to figure out how to make this work. And it strikes a balance between fiscal responsibility and resident impact. The critical difference, that second 5% has to be earned. That additional increase will be evaluated based on actual spending discipline, progress in reducing cost, success in generating alternative revenue, and stabilization of the city's reserves. If this progress is strong, the second increase could be reduced or avoided. That's just something to think about. I don't know. We have to look at the numbers. I don't have a clue. The accountability framework, this approach only works if it's paired with structure. So we talked about, and the mayor talked about it earlier, a budget review, or maybe a budget accountability committee, which would be comprised of us. We just have different hats on, and we would be responsible for the ongoing review of expenditures, not just during budget season. This is an active pursuit of cost efficiencies, technology improvements, reduced reliance on paper and outdated processes. It also includes transparent, and that's what I heard, transparent financial reporting to residents. I constantly say the reporting that we do in our documents, these thick books, should be consumable by the residents. You should be able to click on it, read it, and understand it. The last, well, not the last, I got a couple more, I'm sorry. Protecting residents while we're fixing the problem. That's why I go with this 15-5. This approach avoids asking residents to carry the full burden up front. It creates time to demonstrate better financial management, and it makes smarter decisions before asking for anything more. It reflects respect for taxpayers and their financial realities. We live right outside of Washington, D.C., and we had quite a few residents that were impacted by the federal layoffs and shutdowns. So avoiding deficits, a one-time increase without reform. If we do a one-time increase, that 20% without any type of reform, because we're going to have to develop the reform, we're going to see us repeating the same deficit in a few years. And my concern is, when I come into an organization, I like to see it better than when I came in, when I leave. And I want to make sure that we memorialize those things that are necessary in order to keep the city of Bowie from ever getting to this situation again. So this plan would focus on structural changes, long-term balance, and sustainable budget practicing. The goal is to break the cycle, not to delay it, but break it. And our commitment, the city has to be clear. This is not about permanently increasing the burden. As financial stability improves, the city will work toward reducing reliance on property taxes. But we have to work on it. It's not easy in the state of Maryland that does not have a lot of big corporations here. We don't have a lot of businesses, so that's going to be difficult, but it can be creative. We can think about other ways of doing business. As the financial stability improves, the city will work toward reducing reliance on property taxes, and residents should see this as a step toward stability and eventual relief. So the bottom line, 15% addresses the immediate need. Up to 5% later ensures decisions are based on performance and accountability. Bowie 2030 provides the structure to make this credible. So, Mr. Mayor, that's what my thoughts are as far as moving the city forward. It's not transactional, it's strategic, but I hope my colleagues will consider what I've proposed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Council Member. Staff, does a 15-cent tax rate increase address the problem?
If there is a 15-cent tax increase and not a 20-cent tax increase, the council will want to identify additional cuts to service that can assure that we have a balanced budget.
So to be clear, we have not identified the cuts needed for a 15-cent tax rate increase. And the proposed 20-cent tax rate increase, when we started this budget, was the plan to get us back on track with a zeroed-out reserve fund and then get us time to start rebuilding. 15 cents doesn't allow us to do that without creating even larger deficits in other funds, which further jeopardizes our AAA bond rating. So I just want to be clear about the math.
What's the current savings that we've identified or cuts that we've identified?
If I may.
I'm going to turn to Councilmember Wolfley and then Councilmember Ndebumadu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start with just a quick follow-up question for staff. Staff came to us with $6.5 million in proposed cuts. Is that correct? Yeah.
That total was $5,947,584.
$5.9 million. Okay. So with the cuts that we finished up with after all of our discussion and debates, we ended up with what was the net on that? To include, assuming that we pursue the 1.1 million on the funding solution that we discussed on the lighting.
Just walking through, yes, there were $5.9 million of cuts. The council identified $3.7 million, in rough numbers, $3.665 million in approved cuts, eliminations.
And that
And then add additional 1.1 to get to 4.7 of total expenditures.
Okay.
And then subtract out, if I remember correctly, $100,000 for the potential software, budget software.
Gotcha.
So that brings you down to 4.6.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I want to make a couple of comments here.
Excuse me, council member, before you proceed with your comments, can I please ask a clarifying question on your
Sure.
question? Thank you. This question is for both Councilmember Rogers, yourself, as well as staff. Finance Director Miller, Interim Finance Director Miller, sent over an analysis today with the debt package. Does your proposal include the potential recommendations from that debt package? Is that a part of this, or is that completely separate and we have yet to discuss that?
That would be inclusive, and I think the additional, we don't see any additional savings in the short term in this coming fiscal year for the additional items, I believe, based on this, because I think the others were further out. Is that correct, Mr. Miller? The capital improvements that we added, if we were to add those in, those are items that are further out in the delivery schedule, correct?
Yes, sir. They were in the out years, so therefore they're not reflected in the fiscal year 27 budget. So if they are pulled in, it would increase the budget by that extent, but be reduced also offset-wise by the savings in year one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense, Councilwoman Ndebumadu?
It just was not my understanding from the email received and from the analysis here. So from the analysis here, what I thought I received was a year one net cash flow savings, but what I'm hearing right now is that's inaccurate.
I believe that's correct. I believe that the impact on this coming fiscal year would still be just the 1.1 million.
Because those other expenditures were not included in the fiscal year 27 budget. The request that this is addressing.
The cash flow is still accurate. The net cash flow on this is still accurate.
Correct.
But since it was not budgeted as an expense during this coming fiscal year, we can't count it as a savings.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So let me kind of walk through some of these things. So the first thing I want to say, this is, as Councilwoman Rogers pointed out, this is a structural issue. This is not a speed hump. This is not a first year, 1 year. This is the new reality. 20 cents is what you're going to get one way or another at some point in time down the road. There's not going to be a situation where we're ever going to get to 40 cents again. We just rely too much on the services of the community. I will say this, I mean, I look at the comments this evening. There were a lot of comments, people here speaking in favor of specific expenditures that we'd like to sustain. I also heard people speaking, saying we don't want the tax increase because, well, it's a tax increase. Nobody I've spoken to is enthused about a tax increase, but it's split on where we are in terms of the services offset, right? And ultimately, if we want what we've been getting, we got to pay for it. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. So we got to either stop providing something or we've got to pay for it one way or the other. And this is not easy. We've got a lot of people kind of on both sides of this, and ultimately, the people I've spoken with really, in most of the time, you speak with people on more than just a 20-second blurb. They're like, well, I got to have my services. All right, and I know you don't like it, but yeah, I got to have my services. The concern I have with anything less than the 20 cents, and I know the colleagues disagree with this, is that we've not been responsible from the standpoint of hitting the number that we need for the last number of years in terms of the budget, right? We've been under-revenued for our expenses, and we've been living off the fat of the land, the savings from earlier years. And one argument is like, hey, that's great, that's prepaid taxes. Somebody paid for that in advance, and now you didn't have to pay for it, but now all of a sudden there's a bill because we got to start paying for it because the time's up on that prepaid or overpaid taxes. The ultimate issue, though, is trying to manage the city in an efficient manner, and then in a manner that gets us back on track, not just for this fiscal year, but for the out years. And the 20 cent, I think, is what gets us that. If I could step through a few things, the current budget came in with 20 cents and using 1.75 million of the remaining balance in the fund. So it was same old, which means we were continuing to spend our savings, and that was 20 cents. The council, through listening sessions, tried to prioritize, looked at all the things, with some good creative thinking on the finance side, able to change some of the numbers for us in terms of immediate expenditures. Ultimately, we end up with cuts in expenditures or increased savings of 4.6 million. So 4.6 million, I'll just do round numbers here. We'll call it 4.7. It's not 4.7, but 4.6. 1.7 of that, we really need to stop the bleeding. In my mind, I just cannot see continuing in the same process, which is spending the 1.75 that's there. We've got to stop digging the hole, and we got to start filling it back up. That's why the transfer doesn't do anything for me. It's fungible. It goes from one account to the other. Regardless, it's still a hole. So my first thing is I got to hit that 1.75, and that just gets me even. It doesn't do anything structurally long-term for where we need to be. So after that, with that leaves us with about $3 million, which would be the beginning of our future fund balance, if you will, the building of that fund balance, as well as the expectation that we are going to do some additional cuts, do some review of all ongoing operations. We've committed, I think, as a body to doing that and making this a real commitment for the coming year. And I think we have to have that kind of money going in to the fund balance to preserve our fiscal stability, security, for an organization to have a $100 million budget and then only have like $3 or $4 million in the bank just in case something comes up. To me, that's a problem. I can't see running an operation with 3 or 4% of my money hanging around just in case I have an emergency. I think we really need to be on the upper end of this. I know colleagues don't like 20, but I don't think the 15 puts us in a position where we have the wherewithal. I am not opposed, because I certainly don't like increasing taxes. I'm not opposed to doing 20 cents or something like 20 cents with the understanding that we can ferret out some more savings with the good work of this body and staff and be able to reduce taxes next year once we've kind of established a baseline and say, hey, this is something that we can walk back a little bit. But ultimately, there's no there. I mean, we're cutting into services. So that's where I stand in quick overview. And I do also want to thank staff for all the good work on this, and everybody for being here, and all those at home who emailed and sent in comments as well. Those came in roughly half and half on the budget. Those in favor of raising taxes and those opposed to it. The on the record numbers, and then I think there were 2 or 3 that didn't comment one way or the other, but they wanted to preserve funding for their special interest group, which to me is like, oh, okay, don't cut my taxes, because I want my funding. So it's really tough under that environment to just say, we'll just cut away. So, you know, I'll yield the floor to my colleagues here. I'm interested in what other opportunities we have for generating some additional revenues. Thank you.
I will turn us to Councilmember Ndebumadu.
Thank you so much, Mayor, staff. I just want to start off and say I'm very appreciative of the work of this body and the intentional conversations that we've been having and a lot of the proposals that have been raised by a lot of forward-thinking members of this body, and very thankful for the work of staff. I understand the difficulty in the position that we find ourselves in, where you have staff wondering whether their jobs are going to be kept or their jobs are going to be reduced or cut. And so I understand the very difficult decision that we find ourselves in. However, let me speak for a moment on behalf of District 4. In District 4, coming to this community, you've heard many of our stories in 1999 and being here ever since. There are a lot of people that have higher home values that feel this burden very, very intentionally, and I say that on behalf of my district. We talk about this median monthly increase as if it's universal across the board, and the reality is that it is not. It is very dependent on the value of your home. I've said this for the last couple of weeks. The worst and the last thing I would ever want to see is a tax increase that is imposed on District 4 residents, or really any member of this community, that they are unable to afford at the end of the year because they are on fixed incomes. And then we have a situation where liens are being placed on people's properties, and they're being rerouted out of the generational wealth that they are working so hard to create and preserve. And so I wanted to preface my remarks with that statement, because I'm going to go through a couple of different recommendations here that I believe that can be adopted to further this conversation. I've discussed with some of my colleagues here, so I'm going to go ahead and put this on the floor. I'll start by reading my remarks. I believe many of us recognize the fiscal reality before us. The proposed budget reflects a structural imbalance between reoccurring revenues and reoccurring expenditures, continued pressure on the general fund, and a reduced ability to rely on prior year fund balances to support ongoing operations. I also recognize the importance of preserving core services, protecting the city's financial position, and maintaining long-term stability. However, if council is asking residents to absorb a significant tax increase in the real property tax rate, I believe we should also adopt a corresponding fiscal discipline, modernization, transparency, and tax rate accountability package. The issue before us should not be framed as just revenue alone. It should also include expenditure control, operational modernization, fund balance recovery, and a serious strategy to reduce future dependency on residential property taxes. As currently proposed, I do not believe the revenue approach reflected in this budget or prior year's budgets is sustainable or sufficiently balanced. For that reason, any consideration of a tax cut, a tax rate increase, should be accompanied by a clear and measurable framework for expenditure discipline, modernization, and long-term fiscal alignment. This moment calls for alignment. Alignment between how we grow our costs and how we grow our revenue. Alignment in how we fund capital projects. Alignment in how we how we position the city for long-term strength. That looks like being intentional with contractual services. It looks like pacing areas of expansion. It looks like structuring capital investments in a way that protects the general fund and creates room for the future. And it looks like building a more cohesive strategy around external funding and growing our economic base over time. The proposed budget gives us enough information to act. For that reason, I am recommending that council consider the following amendments ahead of our vote. Section 1, tax rate accountability measure. I'm recommending that we establish a codified commitment that within 2 fiscal years, The city will evaluate and publicly present options to reduce the real property tax rate, including the fiscal conditions required to do so. The analysis should consider fund balance recovery, expenditure reductions, recurring revenue growth, commercial-based tax expansion, redevelopment progress, and service level impact. I'll start there. Mayor Stev, do you want me to just go ahead and go through my list?
So, sorry, just to understand, the first one is that within 2 fiscal years, we will commit to proposing how we would reduce the real property tax rate in the future.
Evaluating and publicly present options.
Okay. Okay. Depending on the property tax rate we adopt tonight,
Yeah.
I see no reason why that wouldn't be possible personally. Yeah.
Okay, that's the First Amendment introduction. The second one is the following are going to be proposed FY budget reductions and saving targets. Second one is vacancy and attrition saving target. Establish an FY27 vacancy and attrition saving target equal to 1.5% of budgeted general fund personnel costs, excluding sworn public safety positions and positions directly required for legally mandated service delivery. Hiring into non-public safety, non-revenue generating, or non-core service vacancies should require notice to the council before the position is filled. That's the first one. The second one is the general fund contractual services reduction. Reduce FY27 general fund contractual services by no less than an additional $750,000, inclusive of the targeted departmental reductions below, excluding public safety, emergency operations, utilities, insurance, debt service, and legally required services. Reductions should be prioritized from professional services, advertising, subscriptions, printing, consulting, discretionary outreach, and non-essential contracted support. I'm going to go to number 3. Economic development contractual services reduction. Reduce economic development contractual services by $250,000, with the reduction prioritized from advertising and promotional spending not directly tied to redevelopment, business retention, measurable business attraction, or commercial tax base expansion. The next, number 4, economic development advertising restriction. Restrict 50% of the remaining economic development advertising line until council receives measurable objectives for business attraction, retention, redevelopment, commercial occupancy, and non-residential tax-based growth. Number 6, discretionary printing, mail, physical advertising reduction. Establish a 25% reduction target for discretionary printing, mail, and physical advertising expenditures across departments while preserving legally required notices, emergency communications, public hearings requirements, election-related notices, and accessibility for residents who rely on non-digital communication. Departments should shift to lower-cost digital communications where legally permissible and operationally appropriate. Number 6. Reoccurring vendor contract savings target. Establish an FY27 reoccurring vendor contract savings target of 5% across all eligible software as service, software subscription, and service contracts, excluding cybersecurity, public safety, legally required systems, and core operational platforms where reductions would impair service deliveries. Savings should be pursued through renegotiation, license reduction, consolidation, utilization review, and elimination of duplicative and underused tools. The Financial Advisory Committee's letter that we received earlier today reinforces the need for vacancy management, contractual services review, operational efficiencies, and technology improvements that reduce long-term costs. This is exactly why I believe we should adopt measurable savings targets before the final budget before the final tax vote. The rest of my comments will come during budget work session number 5, where I've identified additional strategic objectives that will be added to the FY27 budget aimed at revenue generation to balance the tax property reliance over time. Mr. Mayor, right now I'll yield to you to see if there are any clarifying questions needed.
What was the vacancy attrition target?
The vacancy attrition target was equal to 1.5% of budgeted general fund personnel costs.
What was the rationale for that number?
It was based on kind of like where we are, where the budget is right now, and the budget book, and what's basically vacant and what's been presented to us over the last couple of weeks.
Okay, but what is it based on? I mean, is it attempting to save a specific amount of money?
Correct.
Or is it so what's the amount of money it's trying to save?
I don't have that number right now. I can come back to you in a few minutes. Let me
Okay.
just pull it up.
Mayor Pro Tem Wolfley.
So follow up on your proposal. So what would the tax rate be consistent with that to support that?
Basically, what my recommendation is right now in this moment is the adoption of these amendments before we get there. Based on these adoptions, that will tell us what that savings will look like, because there are numbers attached to these savings. So for example, if we do reduce the general fund contractual services by $750,000, that's still more cost savings that can be identified throughout the budget. So it's going to just be dependent on what's adopted right now from what I'm proposing.
Okay, so if we adopted everything, what would it look like?
I think that puts us right now at probably like around an additional like 1.3 million of savings.
Okay, so 1.3? Okay, so that would be a tax rate of 18.7?
I'm going to turn to staff to see if you have the calculations. Mr. Miller, if we adopted a $1.3 million in additional cuts right now, what does that look like, numbers-wise, if you can?
I'm sorry. It's for each $1 million, it's a penny. So there would be 1.3 pennies. So it would take it from a baseline of 20 down to 18.7.
18.7? So that's a proposal that
My proposal is not right now on the tax rate, is on the adoption of these amendments before we get to my proposal on the tax rate.
I mean, I don't have any issues with any of the items in there. It's just, I know that we have to do the tax rate tonight, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of these amendments are proposing like percentage reductions without necessarily looking at the hard numbers. Staff, have you had a chance to review these proposals to actually give us some numbers about what this would look like if we adopted them?
So many of these are, I would say, conceptual in regards to talking about a $750,000 reduction on contractual services. We would have to take a look independently on what those are and communicate to the council the impact on the city's services by reducing those contractual services. Some of the other things that were talked about there, like the 5% reduction in the software as a service. Last week, the council agreed to a little over $90,000 worth of reductions brought forward by information technology. We would have to identify an additional 5% of contracts and communicate with you what the impact on the service would be from those reductions.
And we, in fact, added $100,000 in software costs related to making our budget process less manual. So it stands to reason if we start eliminating software costs, we might in fact be taking processes that would be automated and making them manual again.
Hold on, let me interject, because that is not my recommendation. I think that's going in a different direction. My recommendation in terms of cuts to contractual services are specifically tied in certain areas of professional services, advertising, printing, consulting, discretionary outreach, and non-essential contracted services support.
Sorry, this is the software cut.
There's no software cut. That was a renegotiation of contracts.
So you want us to
So for example, software contracts are renewed annually. So essentially, you can accomplish some aspect of cost savings by renegotiating your contract, just by the simple measure of renegotiation.
Okay, but is there a way we can guarantee that we'll get a 5% reduction without unintended consequences? Like, where did the 5% number come from?
I work in technology, so I know what's achievable.
Okay, but we're hearing about this tonight, and we don't have any hard numbers attached to it. So where did this number come from, and what do you think it will save us?
Based on my calculation, and I just gave you the answer.
Okay. All right, staff, did you hear a specific number that we're going to be saving?
Okay, I just want to give you a clarification on how we do software renewals. When a software renewal comes up, we audit our licenses, make sure that we have the proper quantities, and then we will take those out to multiple vendors to have them give us the best quote. Some of our services, such as Microsoft, we utilize the State of Maryland contract. That gives us the lowest rate possible. We always audit our licenses and look at ways to modify our license counts and what type of licenses we are using to reduce our cost. Generally, though, we're looking at a 7% increase per year with software. So that is across the board and an annual increase. So we are actually facing software increases every year as opposed to decreases in cost. Even though we may reduce our licenses and try to get the best costs from different vendors, we still face increases from year to year.
Thank you. I'm happy to work with you on a strategy on how to reduce that, but council can also make the direction that you don't want to adopt that tonight. That's very simple, but I'm also happy to work with the IT department and find ways to reduce that. Go ahead.
I mean, so if we were to say we want this reduction in software costs, Denise, like what would that look like for you guys?
It would have to be, we'd have to look at other solutions or possibly change current software products for a less expensive product, which would in return cause issues with staff having to learn different products, us having to migrate from one product to another.
Gotcha, so having to retrain and change things up.
Correct.
Okay, understood.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rogers.
I think that the concept is more target, not that it may happen that way, but sometimes we need to set ourselves targets to try to work toward. Now, I recognize that what I'm hearing is that you guys are, in IT, are running things as tight as you possibly can with as small a impact on budget as possible, and I understand that. I do believe that the intention is around putting targets out there so that we manage. This is the only way we're going to get to where we need to go is through some type of disruption. That's not comfortable. I'm not saying IT is the way. IT might be the answer to take care of other disruption that we're bound to come upon. But I think that I heard it more as a target. If the target is unreasonable, then it's an unreasonable target. But going back to my comments, we don't have time to vet it or flesh anything out because we have to make a decision right now. But, you know, I thank you for the effort, and I thank you, Councilwoman. I think that you have some great comments here. I have one other question. If we were to go back and look at everything that the council put back in, if we go back to the original presentation that staff gave us around the cuts, that was about what was it again?
5.9.
5.9. And then if we added in the, what is it, the 1.1?
Associated with the light debt?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. And that would get us to 6 million, which is,
So you will recall staff had proposed a reduction in street lighting costs.
Right, I remember
so
that,
that was
yeah.
included in the 5.9. So the restructuring of the light debt, or putting in light debt in place, was going to be yielding those savings.
okay, and I bring that up because I go back to the 15 million or 15% increase. And if we added back in those numbers for the savings, would that get us to where we needed to be in our fund balance?
Please indulge me. The fund balance is, I pulled up some information this afternoon on rating agencies and what they look at. And the first thing out of the box was that they may change your rating based on fund balance, all right? Near and dear to all of our hearts is maintaining that integrity over your fund balance. we've heard conversations that we don't want to hit the $1.7 million, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If we just add $3 million back to that every year, it's going to take us 6 years to get to 20%. Okay, I just put that, we're talking about a strategic outlook, long-term pro forma, that type of thing. You and I see eye on that. But I would hedge my bet to say that that would be a quick enough turnaround to replenish your discretionary fund balance. Okay? I think you have to be a little bit more aggressive in addressing that deficiency.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. Any other questions, follow-up? Councilmember Brady.
Not follow-up, I'd like to continue with my comments, because we stopped to get feedback on my recommended $2 million, and it never came back to me. So.
It completely spun around. Well, back to you, sir.
So, a couple of items, and just for clarity to make sure I understand. What is the amount of savings that we've identified through the cut process? Bottom line number, because we've been throwing around the number from last Monday night, we've been throwing around the number with regards to going to capital for some of the projects.
At this juncture, after making all the changes last week, we're at 3.6 million plus the 1.1 for 4.7 minus $100,000 for software, budget software. That brings us down to 4.6.
And just out of curiosity, the items that are proposed in your memo with regards to tier 1, 2, and 3, to bundle them in a package and do them kind of through the bonding aspect, none of those have a contribution to this year's budget for this year in the CIP page?
The effort of this activity was to look at future year programs, CIP projects, that could be bundled into the fiscal year 27 lighting streetlight program. So those dollars, if you will, those CIP projects are not in the 27 budget.
I understand that fully.
Okay.
The out years are projections. I understand that.
Right.
But the current year, are there not dollars designated to go to those projects that would not be
It's
otherwise?
my understanding that there are no dollars in the 27 budget.
So there are a few dollars that are associated with it. I don't think that is a significant amount.
Okay, that's the clarity I was asking for. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think what you're seeing right now, and I'm not saying this to denigrate or criticize my colleagues at all, but what you're seeing is how we've budgeted probably for 30 years, where we don't have a good, I don't want to say relationship, we don't have a good sequence that we use, this body, with regards to working with staff to develop the budget. The budget process starts in December, goes through, and then we receive it in April. But really, we need to do a change in philosophy and a change in culture in how we move forward, so that we aren't up here on 4 nights trying to figure out how best to do it, how best to tweak the staff recommendations in order to address the impact that it would have on the citizens. And believe me, 50% tax hike, I know there are people in this city who, hey, I'll just write a check, not a big deal. And there are probably a lot more that it's going to be, what do I choose between whether it's paying taxes or doing something else? So it is a problem. My wife and I can afford the increase in taxes, don't want to pay it, but we can afford it. But I'm not using the impact on me as the metrics for making decisions. We need to figure out in the future how to reduce the dependence on property taxes. It's what, 85 to 90% rather than on the businesses. We need to expand our commercial tax base, and the only way I see in doing that is through annexation and redevelopment, which means we need to stay true to our goals in implementing those in the near future. That's got that covered. There's a whole lot of other things, but I'll throw this out real quickly. I was pondering the future, and ask my colleagues to forgive me. I'm an engineer. I'm not one that uses prose in an eloquent fashion. You know, I look at plans and blueprints and schematics, and I see the eloquence there, and probably many people don't. And I will share with this staff when I'm done. But as a starting point, I just have drafted a draft resolution expressing the sense of the council on the adoption of this budget and a commitment to act to restore reserves. So one of the whereas goes away, but it's whereas the economy both locally and nationally has experienced turbulent times and higher than normal rates of inflation, whereas the city of Bowie's property tax rate has remained flat at 40 cents per $100 assessed value for 15 years, and whereas council recognizes the challenges involved in adopting an austere budget resulting in reduced levels of service and increased taxes on its citizens, whereas the city's unassigned reserve or rainy day fund has been used in recent budget years to pay for normal operating expenses resulting in its depletion, and whereas the fiscal year 2027 proposed budget includes a 50% increase in the property tax rate from 40 cents per $100 assessed value to 60 value to raise the $20 million needed to fully fund the proposed 27 budget. Whereas this proposed increase in the tax rate results in an annual increase in property taxes paid by homeowners of $200 annually, or $1,667 monthly for each $100,000 of assessed value. And I would note that if it's a $500,000 house, we're talking $83.35 per month, or $1,000 per year. And if you have a $1 million house, and we have some that are approaching that, we're talking about $166.70 a month, or $2,000 a year. Whereas council and staff evaluated the services, programs, and projects to find sources of savings in order to reduce the proposed property tax rate increase. The last whereas, council and staff identified savings in the proposed budget resulting in these are fill in the blank spots. Now therefore be it resolved, this is the important part. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Bowie, Maryland, at a meeting on insert date, that section 1, council shall establish a budget subcommittee of the whole to 1, evaluate program budgeting to better facilitate the development of future budgets. Adopt a plan to commit to a timetable for replenishing the reserve fund to an appropriate level. Work with a financial advisory committee and staff to evaluate the appropriate minimum level for the reserve fund. I know we've had some debates here lately, and the financial advisory committee came in and talked about that recently. The next one is dropped. Adopt a written policy for evaluating new or expanded services, programs, and projects for their impact on future budgets. A, develop the necessary procedures for evaluating new or expanded budget proposals, evaluate their cost versus benefit, determine the startup cost of new services, programs, and projects, as well as annual operating costs, define the minimum basis for approving new services, programs, and projects, and lastly, identify possible outside sources of funding from the county, state, and federal And then Section 2, council and staff shall review the capital improvement program to prioritize proposed projects and to eliminate projects of marginal value. So it's just my meager attempt to put something out that would formalize our next steps in changing our culture and refining our approach to developing the budget, because we can't go through 4 or 5 sessions like this in the future. We need to do a better job, and we owe it to the citizens and the taxpayers to do a better job on this and get it controlled so we aren't faced with such drastic ones. And then the last point I will make is that we need to come up with new sources of revenue. And this past legislative session, I think it's House Bill 1142, is a bill that established a summer study to look at revenue sources for local governments. In particular, one item as part of that is to look at how other states handle allowing municipalities and counties to generate revenue. So we, as a body up here, need to participate in that, and we need to probably establish or come up with a resolution that we can submit, or a letter that we can submit in support of expanded effort. But I think it's an item that maybe our lobbyists ought to do a little research to come up with some ideas on what are some new possible sources of revenue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. The resolution that Councilmember Brady presents looks entirely consistent to me with what we've discussed as a group, and I heard no objections from any of my colleagues on this particular concept. So thank you, Councilmember Brady, for bringing this forward. Councilmember Ndebumadu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would, I know there's no action on the table, but I can either suggest the 2 additions and a new provision today, now, or at a later time.
What I might suggest, so we didn't get a chance to kind of finish going through the 7 proposals you had, Councilmember. What I might suggest is we start with this one, which will help set up the process whereby we can have future meetings. A lot of the ideas on here that you proposed, the 7 concepts, I think in concept, folks are prepared to agree with all of them to a certain point, but I think more as targets rather than necessarily hard commitments tonight. But we could start with these 7 as a part of our work in the resolution that is set forth by Councilmember Brady. Yes, sir.
Clarifying real quick.
Yes, sir.
What I gave you is just a draft of something that I thought we could possibly adopt the night we adopt the ordinance. It's not intended to be acted upon tonight. It's just a framework for future discussion. So I was not expecting a decision to be made on it tonight.
Understood. I will say you did good work, because everything in here, I don't think any of your colleagues are going to object to a single word of it. But we can absolutely take it up on May 18, if not tonight. But thank you, Councilmember.
Okay, I'll just, Mayor Esteve, I'll just respond to your comment. I'll add my additions under Section 1, and then other provision on May 18th in regards to the resolution. But in regards to your comments tonight, I'm fine with them being adopted as targets. However, there are 2 hard commitments that are monetary that are additional $1 million in savings. So I'm going to stay firm on that proposal of the extra $1 million in cuts across contractual services.
Gotcha. Does staff have any thoughts on that $1 million in contractual service cuts?
And I also did provide specific recommendation to where they should come from based on what is proposed in the budget in those specific sections.
We'll need to bring back a recommendation on what that $1 million is for the council to take a look at to see if you are accepting of those. As we had seen last week, we had made a number of proposed cuts and reductions, and the council had different ideas in regards to that. One of those being printing. Last week we had advised a reduction, and we had dollars that ultimately came back. So we can evaluate that, certainly.
Understood. A couple of other items. Tonight, we had pretty strong applause to the idea of restoring a few things. One was the restoration of the funds the council previously cut for the Bowie Volunteer Fire Department. That amount, I believe, was $165,000. What I would propose tonight is that we restore those $165,000 for this coming fiscal year and schedule a meeting with our Bowie volunteer firefighters based on the comments they made tonight in the coming 2 months, where we can begin discussing plans for what that commitment looks like in future years. Do any of my colleagues have any thoughts on that particular recommendation? Councilmember Brady.
Thank you. When we discussed this at the time, we cut all of that. The staff noted that for the last 5 or 6 years that while we've budgeted that amount, they've only drawn down half of it. So that maybe in the situation we're in now, maybe that number should be reduced to 80 or even 100,000 rather than the 167.
My understanding is that a lot of the difference has to do with the difference in accounting years and when budgets are scheduled. I think their main ask, if I heard them tonight correctly, was essentially to not abruptly cut the funding this year, but continue the funding for this year, have the conversation with them about what future commitments might look like, so that they're not having to make any changes to programs. But essentially they said, from what I understood, that they're very willing to work with us.
Which means?
To sit down and discuss what we can do in future years.
As far as the proposal, you stay with?
Oh, to stick with 165,000 in the fully restored amount, yep. Any other thoughts or questions on that? Do we have general consensus to restore the full amount to the Bowie Volunteer Fire Department?
So,
Councilmember Truesdale.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the 165, how is that working with us if they're not moving any numbers, you know, in terms of they're using half of the resources?
So clarification, what other thing will we cut in order to make sure that we provide the funds to the fire department?
To be clear, we're talking about $165,000. That's a part of a package of $3.7 million that we accepted. So if we're not willing to adjust the tax rate a fraction of a cent for $165,000 for the Bowie volunteer firefighters, we can look for $165,000 elsewhere, but I'm not proposing any other cuts.
But, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember.
We just sat here for the last 3 hours where multiple residents are saying that we need to be more intentional and not raise their taxes on the full 20 cent. We just voted on it, it failed. And you're recommending for us to add this money. I'm not negating its value and what services it will deliver for the person asking. What I'm saying is we need trade-offs now. We need trade-offs right now. We cannot be recommending to put monies back in and you hear residents saying they don't want their taxes raised and then nobody's sitting here proposing other meaningful cuts. So we need the trade-offs now and we need to make those cuts tonight, or I don't understand. I think the people have spoken.
I also heard the people applaud all the firefighters when they spoke. Did I mishear?
So what is your trade-off? If you would like
Nothing.
to add that 165, okay, so do you want to make a motion for that?
Yes, I would like to
Okay.
I would like to re-add the $165,000 for the Bowie volunteer firefighters for this coming fiscal year.
With no additional cuts identified?
Absolutely. Would we like to take a roll call vote?
There was no second.
Would we like a second? No second. Would we like to take a roll call vote? Councilmember Rogers.
Mr. Mayor, I think you're being unfair. Honestly, I do. I think we have to have an opportunity. It's not fair to the firefighters, and it's not fair to the staff and the citizens sitting in here to just arbitrarily do this. There has to be some level of negotiation. We just talked about the discipline. I believe the firefighters should get their money. The point being is that where else are we going to take it from? Or is there a commitment to take it from somewhere else and you're not willing to negotiate?
I am the only person, along with Councilmember Wolfley, who has proposed a property tax rate that allows us to do the things we say we want to do.
Stop politicizing this vote. You are politicizing this, and that's not fair to us. We are sitting up here with you.
I'm trying to support you.
Right.
Let's do this then. Let's do this then. Let's keep the money out for the volunteer firefighters. Let's agree to all the cuts that we made, the $3.8 million in total. Let's keep all of it.
Okay.
I'm open to a proposal on a tax rate increase. If people think that that's better, we can do that. Councilmember Brady.
maybe an observation here. I understand the issue with regards to this, and I don't have a problem with replenishing funds that they absolutely need. I just don't think the full amount is the appropriate. And I understand where, if we're going to put stuff back in, we need to pull it somewhere else. Here's the bottom line. We can come up with all of these numbers, and it's great. We establish, based upon the numbers that we pull up, we establish a tax rate, and then staff will have to implement that across the board in order to ensure that the budget that we adopt in a week factors all of that in. So once we establish the rate, it kind of locks them into what they need to do with regards to some very subtle little tweaking of individual departments or otherwise. So I think the more important thing tonight is to establish the rate.
So what you're saying tonight is propose a tax rate and then leave it up to staff to decide what gets cut or kept on our behalf?
Well, not what necessarily to cut, but to identify small marginal savings that would add up to meeting the tax rate that we set.
Okay. To be clear, it is the responsibility of this council, the 6 council members up here, to make decisions about what this city funds, what it doesn't fund, what services we provide, and what services we don't provide.
True.
Does anyone disagree with that? No. Okay. So the proposal to set a tax rate and then leave it up to staff to make cuts is us giving them our job.
And I'm not necessarily saying we can identify all of the cuts that we want and what have you. And, you know, if you're talking the 165,000 you're talking about, okay, if we put that back in, there's going to have to be an adjustment somewhere else through program, through what have you. You know, when we set budgets and when we do all of what we do, we don't micromanage. We don't dot every I and cross every T. We give them direction and they implement what we're talking about. And I think the direction is more important than necessarily identifying the absolute. The absolute really is the setting of the tax rate. So, I mean, if you want to identify 165,000 elsewhere, go right ahead. We'll consider it.
Let's do this. Let's go ahead and propose a tax rate.
Mr. Mayor, I'll try and put something together here based on what I think I've heard from colleagues over the course of the discussion, and hone in on Councilwoman Ndebumadu's proposal that I would move that we pursue her adjusted, what did you call, Councilwoman Ndebumadu, you called them?
Budget reductions and savings targets.
Okay, so that I would recommend, or I would propose, I would move that we would endeavor to pursue those targets, those budget reductions and savings and revenue targets, and bearing on establishing the tax rate at 18.75 is what I believe I heard earlier, 18.75.
Is there a second?
Question of the maker of the motion.
Yes, sir.
Basically, it sounds like you're taking the savings that she's identified to reduce the tax rate. What happened to all the other money that we identified as savings in the budget? The 4.6.
The 4.6 is, that money ends up as stopping, 1.75 million of it goes to stopping withdrawals from the reserve fund. The balance is 2.8 million, which is not what I would like it to be. That leaves $2.8 million, which would be contribution to the reserve fund, which is inadequate based on kind of our comments earlier. but it's 20 cents was not, was rejected.
So
it
essentially, all the savings that we've identified over the last 4 meetings, you're putting all of that into the reserve fund.
Am I putting all of it into the reserve fund? No. Only 2.75, 2.8. 1.75 of it funds our budget directly. 1.75 replaces that which would have been taken out of the reserve fund, but it does not go into the reserve fund. It would just go into funding operations for this year, which would balance operational expenses against revenue.
Okay.
To include $2.8 million contribution to reserves. So it would start up a very small contribution to the reserve fund. So it stops withdrawal and starts, at least in a small step, adding back into the reserve fund, which we need to get back to 20% or so. So that, I think we heard our finance director telling us that's probably going to take, at that rate it would take like 10 years to get a reserve fund where it needs to be. But I think that that's where the proposal that you have on the table with your, that we've all agreed to in principle, this model with our, this, which I think addresses getting us back to a more sustainable, responsible, long-term, positive track record or positive result in our revenues, right?
I understand that. You're talking about putting what's a little sleight of hand, because the proposed budget has 1.75 million, the last of that in the reserve fund coming to balance the current budget, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And we've identified, so you're talking about putting, instead of taking it out, you're going to use 1.75 of our savings to pay for the current budget year, and then put the rest back into the reserve fund, which in essence is putting the $4 million into the reserve fund. It's how you're doing it.
It is. It's not putting $4 million in. It is, however, resulting in a $4 million.
No, you're putting $4 million in. Mr. Mayor, just real quickly, with regards to your concern that we're allowing staff to make decisions on the budgetary stuff. I mean, you kind of commented on that just a minute ago when I said set the rate and then let staff. Well, remember, we're not going to adopt the budget till next week, which means staff can come back and make the recommendations, and we can either accept them or tell them to do something different. So we still have some control over the process, even if we just set the rate tonight.
Staff, what would you say to such a proposal?
We can bring recommendations back to the council, but ultimately it is the council's decision to accept them. So last Monday, the council had rejected about 40% of the dollars associated with our recommendations.
And is it a reasonable guess that you guys will come back with those very same recommendations?
That would be futile, I would think, but we could if you would like us to.
Okay. Would my colleagues prefer that we take another look at the 5.9 million, or just assume that everything that we have cut from that is permanent and final, and that we're not willing to take a look at those specific recommendations again? Let's assume we're not going to look at those again. Let's look at a new set of proposed cuts. So what this means is what we will be doing tonight is setting a tax rate without knowing exactly what we're going to fund or not fund in order to achieve that tax rate. So over the next 2 weeks, it's going to be a competition between a bunch of different programs and services and staff to see what survives and what doesn't. That's kind of the course we're committing to. Just want to be clear about that. Is there a second on the 18.75% tax rate proposal? I hear no second. Motion fails. Is there another motion on the table?
I would like to say no tax increase, but I know that's not a rational thing to say or do or support or suggest. And I know that probably anything below 15 cents is irresponsible on our part up here. So, and I think we need to factor in the impact it has on the taxpayers. You know, we're talking 50% increase. Imagine if you went and had to buy groceries and you paid 50% more, or you went to buy a car, a needed car, and it's 50% more. I mean, that's a large number, and we up here need to have some, I think, contrition with regards to allowing it to get to where it is today. So I would suggest an 18-cent so that at least we show the taxpayers that we are factoring in the impact it has on them. It won't start building up the reserve fund. I mean, it was 1.75 for the current fiscal year, and no one batted an eye last year during the budget session. And I think trying to build it way too fast, I should say taking too large a first step, is problematic, so that if we go with an 18-cent one, then you're talking about putting in about $3.5 million, not 1.1 or 4.1, 4.25. So it's a compromise, and I would move 18 cents reluctantly.
Mr.
Is there
Mayor?
a second?
No, I'm not, unreadiness. So last week, earlier this week, I brought up, why don't we do 18 cent, 19 cent, give us a penny, all right? I got nothing. I got nothing when I asked for a penny. And all I'm trying to do is to allow the residents an opportunity to prepare and transition into this change. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be political. I am not trying to not work with you, but it makes me really, I get very concerned when there is no ability to negotiate from the mayor. I heard you, Mayor Pro Tem, and I appreciate your effort. I came in with something that I thought that was fair and reasonable, thinking that I would get more engagement and more opportunity for discussion, more reasonableness. I always use a reasonable person rule whenever I do anything. I have really worked hard to be extremely professional throughout this entire process, but certain behaviors I cannot tolerate. When I am trying to negotiate any deal, when I'm trying to negotiate, my expectation is there's some level of reasonableness. We all know that there has to be a 20% increase. We all know that we're in a $20 million deficit for our reserve fund. We all know that. And no one in here and no one listening on this television does not understand the gravity that we're in. Nobody does not understand. I mean, everybody understands that. All I'm asking for is some reasonableness for the residents that we all represent. We go the last 10 years, 15 years or whatever with nothing, and then all of a sudden it's a huge jump, and everybody is supposed to absorb it and say okay and move forward. And it really is discouraging to me. It really is that I cannot negotiate something that's reasonable. And I thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for at least coming back and trying to reach. but I'm not getting anything from you, Mayor, and I'm trying really hard to do that. I spend a lot of time looking at this stuff as well. I think every one of us up here takes this extremely seriously, because this is on our shoulders, this burden that we're going to have to take forward. And as long as I'm here, I don't ever want the city of Bowie to get in this situation again. So I'm going to hop off my soapbox, all right? And then I'm going to do a little bit of more introspective reflection about what I need to do in order to be more effective with my reasonableness. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your time.
Thank you, council member. Mayor Pro Tem Wolfley.
There's a motion on the floor for an 18-cent tax rate. My feeling is that it's not adequate, but that's all right. I mean, we've already crossed that bridge, and I will certainly second the 18-cent tax rate.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion?
Clarification on the motion, Mr. Mayor. Clarifying question is, can you run through the breakdown of the 18 cent again? Just restate that for the constituents watching.
Mr. Brady, I'll leave it to Mr. Brady if he cares. He proposed an 18-cent tax rate for the resolution to our impasse here. In my mind, that's inadequate, but we've already crossed that bridge, and there's not enough people who think that 20 cents is appropriate, and so 18 cents. That, to me, if I'm not mistaken, would put us somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million, or is it 1.8 million that we'd end up putting into the reserve fund? I think that's how we ended up. I haven't done the math on it, but I'm 3.5.
That's about what will be in the reserve fund.
That's what would be in the fund, not
Right.
what we're putting in. Okay,
Right.
yeah.
Now, we're putting that in because the budget pulls all of it out, zeroes it out.
Right.
We're putting it back in, so that contribution would be about 3.5 or so, 3.1.
Yeah.
Okay, so 3.5 to the reserve fund? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the motion?
Just one more question.
Councilmember Ndibu Madu.
And then just to make sure I'm tracking properly, then that is staff will come back next meeting on cuts? Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Reluctant aye.
So that's 3 nays, motion fails. Do I hear a different, you know what? I hear what the council member is saying. I hear what a lot of my colleagues are saying. Let's take a 10-minute recess. Let's breathe. Let's talk. Let's think a little bit. And why don't we come back in about 10 minutes? Are my colleagues okay with that?
I'm good with that.
All right, let's do that. Thank you, team. We're going to take a 10-minute break. right, folks, I'm going to bring us back to order. Thank you, everyone watching at home and in the audience, for your patience, and a big thank you to my colleagues for taking some time in small groups so we could kind of talk things through. Thank you again, Councilmember Rogers, for accepting my apologies, because I know this is tough, and everyone has been working hard, and I know that all of us are ready to set fire to our budget books at this point. This has been one of the most challenging budget cycles, but the reason why it's been challenging is because this group collectively has been the first group in a while willing to make the hard decisions. And I think you all deserve a lot of credit for a tremendous amount of courage and thought and time these last several weeks. So with that, I'll turn it over for a potential motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for adopting a 18-cent tax rate with the provision that we establish a commitment within one fiscal year, that we evaluate and publicly present options to reduce real property tax rate, including fiscal conditions required to do so. Would include analysis of the fund balance, expenditure reductions, recurring revenue growth, commercial tax base expansion, redevelopment progress, and service level impacts that Councilwoman Ndebu Madu spoke to earlier this evening.
Staff, is that motion understood?
Yes, we are proposing an 18-cent tax increase with the conditions he stated, and we will read them back.
Perfect. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
The motion is moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All in opposed, say nay. Nay. 2 nays. Okay. Motion passes. Do I hear another motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move to adjourn to closed session under Maryland Statutory Authority General, the Open Meetings Act General Provisions, Article 3-305, Section 1, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals, and to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and matters directly related thereto, and 4, to consider a matter that concerns the proposal for a business or industrial organization locate, expand, or remain in the state.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.